I love the city of Richmond, and I want to see us grow. We were the capital. You can't erase that. I mean, we had, 5 dreadful years of slaughter on both sides, and we were the capital of the South. So what are we going to do? Just whitewash it and say it never existed? No, it existed, but let's learn from it and don't repeat ourselves.
That was Bill Galash, president of Richmond, Virginia's Monument Avenue Preservation Society. The city's Confederate statues are being hotly debated in the aftermath of the events in nearby Charlottesville. So I traveled to the former capital of the Confederacy and spoke with Charlottesville Councilwoman Kristin Szakos, who first raised taking down her city's Civil War monuments, Richmond Mayor Levar Stoney, who says his city's statues should go, and Christy Coleman, the CEO of the American Civil War Museum. That's where we gathered for our conversation, and we started with the events in Charlottesville.
It was an armed invasion of our city. It was horrifying.
You will not replace us!
From the torchlight march through UVA to about 500 fascists and Nazis and white supremacists and white nationalists with AK-47s and clubs and knives. We could tell it was a terrible event from the very start.
And Mayor, your reaction when you saw those people carrying torches?
It just made my heart sink to see that sort of gathering of hate and division and intolerance. To me, it was akin to a Klan rally without the hoods. As a millennial, it's something we, as millennials, we just haven't seen. Normally, you see that on black and white film from the civil rights movement, but to see that as clear as day, only 60 miles away from your city, in your state that you love so much, it made my heart sing.
And Christy, you so affiliated with this museum, with the history. What was your reaction?
I realized that an important flashpoint had been reached. We go through these cycles whenever there is forward progression in social movement and social expansion of civil rights. There is always a very violent and very quick and very hot pushback on that. This is how the cycle works. This is what happens when we turn history into nostalgia.
Tell me a little bit more what you mean about that, turning history into nostalgia.
There are people who really need to say, this is who we are, and these are our heroes, and we honor these people because they were good and they were noble and they were righteous. And we don't want to look at the other complexities of these individuals. And that's really about nostalgia. That's not about the real push and pull that is always a part of the history dynamic.
It seemed like Richmond had been able to accommodate the various sides. On one of its main streets, Monument Avenue, statues of 5 Civil War leaders loom over the city prominently. But with the events in Charlottesville, even this former capital of the Confederacy is rethinking how its history should be displayed. So talk a bit about those monuments. What do you do now?
I requested that they actually provide context to the monuments, explain them who these individuals were, or how they got there, and why they were put there. And I thought these would be tools to teach and enlighten. Unfortunately, what happened Saturday, we've seen that these are now rallying points for people to harbor, hate and division and intolerance. And those are not with the values of this city. I'm offended by them. I think about my grandmother who grew up in the segregated South and the Deep South in the low country of South Carolina, 1923. She would be offended by those things. And I want to be on her side. I want to be on the side of the right.
Is there a way to view those monuments that's not viewed as racist?
I mean, well, clearly there are, because there are people who don't view them as racist. They view them as symbols of a virtue. They view them as a memorial to a sacrifice that people made for their homes. I mean, clearly that's a part of the narrative. They do tell us a lot of interesting stories if we're willing to hear them. Nobody's talking about being politically correct. Nobody's talking about being, what's the other one I hear? You're being revisionist. And no. History is always a process of new questions. Every generation asks a new question. And as scholars, we go back and look at what the historical record left us to try to answer them. And we would be irresponsible if with these new questions that we did not go back and say, hey, now we understand this thing in a bigger way.
You heard Donald Trump compare Stonewall Jackson, Robert E. Lee, to Thomas Jefferson and George Washington.
This week it's Robert E. Lee. I noticed that Stonewall Jackson's coming down. I wonder, is it George Washington next week, and is it Thomas Jefferson the week after? You know, you really do have to ask yourself, where does it stop?
I don't believe there's a comparison at all. Washington and Jefferson were the founders of the, part of our founding fathers. They did not take up arms against the United States of America. Here, we do celebrate. I don't think any other city out there, any other country or in the world celebrates another army taking up arms against its actual country, except here in the South. And that's why they're different to me.
When we have the statues of Washington and Jefferson, they're portrayed doing things like being the father of our country, or writing the Declaration of Independence, or being president. Whereas these Confederate statues, they're in full army regalia, fighting a war against the United States for the perpetuation of slavery. So that's what they're being celebrated for.
The country's worried about this. So what do you think going forward?
And here's the thing, I do believe that we need to take a moment to breathe, and chill out a little bit, and we're going to get that time. And once we chill out and breathe, we're going to get back to the discussion in a civil manner. Absolutely. And we're going to work on finding a resolution to this.
And how do you do that, and particularly when you have a president who says those monuments are beautiful?
I appreciate the president's opinion, but here in the city of Richmond, I don't think that frankly matters. He didn't live here. We live here. And so we'll be the individuals who will choose our destiny.
Those people who say, this is our heritage, these are our people, they fought. And whether they fought for a side that you may not think is a good side, they're still our people. How do you convince them?
It's really trying to reconcile for communities and help communities come to understand this really interesting dance between what history really is, which is all of this messy, the notion of heritage and the notion of memory, and how they play out in public life.
There are always going to be people on opposite sides who are just going to frankly disagree. I think here in Richmond, we like to think that we've fully healed from our difficult and unique past, but I think what we're seeing is that we haven't. It's like putting a cast on a broken arm and not ever fully healing, and that is the case. But you know what? Just like Charlottesville, Richmond's resilient.
Is this something that scars your city, makes your city a better city?
We are the town of Thomas Jefferson, who talked about all men are created equal, and we believe that. I have to say that I've been really proud of my city. The way that we've kind of taken this hit and tried to come together, we're still in the process, and it's going to take a long time. It's a traumatic thing.
You know what? Things will get better. They always do. And so I try not to despair, despite what President Trump may say or do. I know and have faith, and that's why you get into this work, that things will get better.
Have faith that things will get better. Our thanks again to Mayor Levar Stoney, Kristin Szakos, and Christy Coleman. The American Civil War Museum is certainly a museum worth a visit.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.